from the All Indiana Podcast Network.
It's time for real conversation about the real issues that affect our communities.
Poverty, education, equality, and more.
This is Real Talk.
Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network. I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and on this episode, we will do part 2 of a discussion that we had last week concerning the status of Black America. We had a fascinating conversation in part 1. We will pick it up today in part 2. Welcome to Real Talk on the All Indiana Podcast Network, and I am Reverend Charles Harrison, and it is so good to be with you today. Last week, we had a very fascinating conversation that we were having concerning the status of Black America. And I had 2 very special guests with me last week. And we're going to kind of pick it back up today. I had with me Annette Johnson, who is the Pike Township Trustee. And I also had with me John Hall, who is a former Deputy Mayor here in Indianapolis under Mayor Stephen Goldsmith. Welcome, Annette and John.
How you doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing good. Let's kind of pick up because I felt like last week it was a very fascinating conversation that we were having. We were really trying to be honest and really talk about for the last 6 decades, 60 years, what has been the progress of Black America since the civil rights movement in the 1950s and 60s. What areas have Black Americans, made significant progress? Where might we still be, stagnant? And where has there been decline? And we were touching on a lot of different subjects last week. And I know we want to kind of pick up today a little bit with education. And Annette, I know you want to kind of really focus on this whole education piece. Have things gotten better for Black America since integration? We integrated to schools, and the whole purpose of integration was basically to make education equal for blacks as it was for white Americans, and we started busing, particularly in inner cities. I'm from the country. I call myself Jeffersonville the country, a little rural community. So we always went to school, with the white students in Jeffersonville. So I really didn't get bused. I went to a black elementary school, but after that it was integration. So it's different. But I know that's different from Indianapolis. So let's talk a little bit about education today. Have we really progressed in the area of education? Has it been the same, or are we digressing?
Well, again, thank you, Dr. Charles Harrison, for having me here as well, and such a great question. And I think we touched on this a little bit last week. We were talking about the civil rights movements in the 60s and ending portion of the 60s, going into the beginning portions of the 70s. And it seems like from there, the tailspin was education. Let's get our youth educated. And it seemed like we were doing a great job as we went into the late 70s, the 80s, and I would say even a portion of the 90s. But it seems like we have, digressed a little bit in around 2000. Think about that from 2000 to 2010, you saw the numbers of individuals getting college educations kind of dwindling. And so, I was sharing this earlier this week. It seems like individuals that were the 70s, the 80s, the 90s babies, those individuals are gainfully employed and on the ends of retirement age, good jobs, will have a great pension.
Right. And
now we're up to, again, where we are digressing, and that's where I'm a little scared for our future in our economy. And, you can see that with the unemployment rate being a little higher than what it's been.
I was looking at the education, particularly high school graduations, and I was really curious about that because I knew that would be a topic of conversation. In 2022, Black student graduation rate was 77%. compared to the white graduation rate, which was at 88%. Hispanic graduation rate was 83%. And for Asians, it was 92%. So we were the lowest when it came to graduation rate. In 2023, the graduation rate rose for black students. It rose from 77% in 2022 to 82% in 2023. So we saw an increase, but it increased everywhere. For whites in 2022, white students, it was at 90%. For Hispanic students, it was at 86% in 2023. And for Asians, it went from 92% in 2022 to 96%, in 2023. So almost 100%. So it does seem like that more black students are graduating, but we're not graduating at the same pace as whites, Hispanics, and Asians. And the question becomes, what may be the barrier? John, you want to kind of talk about that?
I'll jump in because Annette had some good stats and you've got some good stats. I would put on the table for you all to discuss here. There are two factors that has happened. And Annette drew the picture perfectly. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, the black culture of that time was education. You're going to do better than me, Annette. I want you to go to school. Right. School is the key. Education is the key. That's the first piece.
Okay.
The second piece, we fought for this integration piece. And the reason was we felt we could not get a equal education in the black schools. Now, that was the argument.
That was the argument.
Yeah.
That was the argument. I started out in a black school.
Right.
It was just like Attucks in Tennessee.
Right.
But that was the argument on the table. I tell you, two things shifted. The black culture. You don't hear us talking about education is the key now.
No.
We talk about thug life.
Right.
We talk about anti-middle class.
Right.
And the second piece, I read an article just so I could come back and throw it at you.
All right.
The CEO of Honda Automotives said he now needs individuals in his plants that can read and do math at the 9th grade level.
Wow.
European Americans are reading at the 9th grade level. 58% of them do. African Americans are at 22%. So when you can graduate, I might get even on graduating.
Right.
But if I've not grasped the skills,
Exactly.
I might be $10 an hour.
So the question becomes, as you threw that out, the culture in the 1960s and 70s, pushed education. It was the way in which we saw ourselves achieving, equality and moving up. The argument that I make sometime, and I throw this question out, was it de-emphasized when blacks started getting factory jobs and making middle-class income so that you no longer needed a college degree or a graduate degree or, a master, a PhD or a doctorate degree to reach that middle-class, income. So what impact did the factories have on the black culture, that de-emphasized education when you could graduate from high school, go into a factory, and make a middle-class income?
Well, we talked about that last week. I mean, that was a structure that everyone, I would say, was flocking to.
Okay.
I can get a factory job and make just as much as anyone else that went to school for 4 or 5 years, took time out of their life to do that. And then you had individuals where they were making sure that their family members would also get the factory job. But then look what happened there. Naval Avionics and all these different Fort Benjamin Harris and different other factories. Once the jobs went overseas, they just left those individuals holding the bag. There was no jobs. And now we're back again, circling back around. You needed your education because the jobs set and skill that's out here now require college education. You don't have that. And so we were forced to go backwards. So now we're backtracking to get back up to where we were, where we've lost 20 years now.
Right,
20 years of that.
Right. But is it more difficult today with the changing culture and what the culture is emphasizing today compared to, I would say in the 1960s and 50s, 1960s and 70s, black culture was much more conservative in the sense of our values and those things that we were emphasizing compared to my children and grandchildren's culture. Because I'm now in senior citizen, so I've seen the change in the culture. So I'm not for sure how we, as Annette just talked about, how we recapture that with the changing of the culture and the emphasis on education and what you said, John. This anti, feeling among some in the black community when it comes to the middle class.
I would say that factory jobs impacted both European Americans and African Americans because it was a good middle class income. Yeah. The piece about it was, though, getting into a higher level. And for a long time, African Americans were blocked out of skilled trades. Exactly. One of our big church members was one of the earliest blacks to get into skilled trades and made, still making good money. Right. But the question is, in our homes now, as Annette talks about, how do we make a turnaround? In our home settings of those single mothers, people who may be coupled but are struggling, working to try to get over that hump, is that atmosphere in that home pushing education, pushing skills. Not all of us are going to go to college.
Right.
But as Annette pointed out, the skill level is going up for you to make that middle class income.
Exactly.
Honda's saying ninth grade. Other plants need more.
Right.
So if we're listening to the music, to the rap, to the culture where education isn't emphasized,
right,
I don't see how we turn around in that.
Yeah. Well, these are some numbers I want to kind of throw out here, and let's talk about it because I think this is a really great discussion. The black household income has risen. In 1970, the black household income was $30,400 compared to whites, who was at $54,000 when it came to household income. In 2022, it rose about $22,000 from 1970. Now, black household income is at $52,860 compared to white household income, which is $77,250, which is about a 32% difference, about a $24,000 difference, when it comes to that. In 2023, 52% of white Americans are still in middle class, 49% of Hispanics, 47% of blacks and Asians are middle class. Also, I found this to be an interesting statistic that the poverty level for black Americans in 2022 was 17.1%, which is the lowest in the history for black America, but it's still well above what white poverty level is, which is at 8.6%. So it does seem like we have made some progress. Has that progress been among black middle class and upper class when it comes to the average household income? And it does seem like we have less blacks in poverty today than what we did, in 1970 and 1960 and 50. So go ahead. So as we kind of talk, there does seem to be some advancements among Black America, and is it Black middle class who are, whether they're the most educated or the most skilled, seem to be doing well, or is it reflective of Black couples, who both may have good jobs and it has caused the average median income to rise, or some of our more wealthier Blacks?
I read an article that Black married couples are only 13,000 less than European American couples.
Okay.
So that would say that those who are single mothers, those who do not have a partner that is contributing to the pot, are the ones that are lowering the amount of income they have to work with. I mean, that's just the simple math.
I would agree. I was going to say the same thing. Again, married couples, middle class, they're able to, income-wise, take care of what they need to take care of, live in different places that they want to live in, and have I would say a house, 2-car garage, two vehicles, because that's how it is, because wife has a car, the husband has a car.
Right.
But again, it's our single women that are struggling, and because of that, it's hard for them to stay afloat, and that's why we have so many social services programs. I mean, think about the economy. We have to have those type of organization and groups and entities in place, because you have that population of women that are struggling. I see it all the time at the trustee's office. They come in, the income. It's hard to have a one single family, there's just the mother in the household, and then you got 2, 3, 4 kids that you're trying to take care of. Get to school, do this, do that. It's just not feasible.
So is the formula then, as we talk about it, if the gap is going to be closed between the average Black household income compared to that of whites, Hispanics, and Asians, is the formula to push marriage or people living together where there's 2 incomes? Is that the formula to bring somewhat closer to parity the average household income of Blacks compared to whites in this country?
Well, of course, you want the marriage piece to be the
I
biggest,
certainly have to say that as a pastor.
Yeah, you want that to be the biggest component, but I think that's more reasonable and sensible for people. But I think versus couples living together, because at any given moment, someone could say, I'm gone, I'm out.
Right.
But when you're in a marriage, you have a little more leeway to kind of work on it, to try to put this stuff together, because it's going to be rough if we separate or divorce, and who gets this and that. So to me, the image would be marriage.
But I think it's harder today, Annette and Pastor, for a single Black woman to find a partner that, one, is skilled up,
right,
that is working, has a job,
right,
and that is willing to blend families together to build the formula. The formula has never changed.
Right.
Since Adam and Eve, if you believe that. The formula has never changed. But Black people were coupled up in the 40s and the 50s, and progress was being made.
Okay.
But the culture shifted. And it's not just Black culture.
Right.
I mean, European American culture now. There are probably more single women out there.
There are
working and trying to make it.
Yeah.
So how do we come up with a plan that can partner up people together who are skilled up, whether college or whether a trade or whether some skill higher than the 9th grade level that the CEO at Honda's looking for, to then raise children to be productive too?
I think the perception and just, growing up in Jeffersonville, being, right across the river from Louisville, Kentucky, living now in Indianapolis. I also spent time in Columbus, Ohio. I think the perception is that when you look at what's happening in large urban communities, you would think that the percentage of blacks who are more low income is greater than what the numbers are showing. Because if you think about if 74% of black children are born in the single parent household, then you assume that there's a high percentage of single income households in the black community. That's not necessarily true just because a woman may have a child out of wedlock. It doesn't mean that she's going to stay there. And all of us men who have multiple children by sometimes multiple women, I think I was a little surprised at the numbers because my perception was probably the poverty level was higher than what it is, and that the income level for black Americans was lower. So when I saw 52,800, in 2022, I would assume the average median income was lower than that for black Americans.
I mean, it's a complicated question, and it's complicated trying to figure out how do we make it work.
Right.
Because what we want is a better outcome.
Right.
We don't want to keep progressing.
Right.
And going backwards. We want to keep going forward. And the numbers and the data that both of you have given is just really, it's very disturbing.
Okay.
We're not able to catch up. It seems like it.
I think progress has been awesome.
Right.
From W.B. Du Bois, 10%,
right,
a 10% black middle class in the 1930s to a, what'd you say, 45, 47%?
47%.
Black middle class today.
Right.
That's huge.
Right.
I mean, that's huge.
Yeah.
So it's like the best of times and the worst of times.
Okay.
Our communities, our urban areas that you talk about,
right,
crime is rampant.
Right.
Can young kids who are living in that urban area, going to school in that urban area, can they get quality living, education, experiences if crime is dictating the game?
You're right.
But I think that the part of the problem is, and for those who are listening, this is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison, and I'm talking with Annette Johnson, Pike Township Trustee, and John Hall, former Deputy Mayor of Indianapolis under Mayor Steve Goldsmith, about the status of black America, and we're really talking about the black household income and black middle class and poverty and those things. I think the challenge, John, is that if you grow up in a middle class household as a black youth, you see the formula in your parents. Okay, you're being taught how to do it. You see it compared to someone who may grow in a different environment, who are in one of these urban areas where there's high crime and violence. And struggles, in the household. So they're not seeing the formula, so that not that they cannot overcome their circumstances and their environment, but I think it becomes more challenging today, particularly when black youth and black families are not connected to the church like they once was. And I think the church played a major factor in black excellence being achieved because we was pushing that. So we talk about the formula in the 1950s and 60s. A lot of that was also being birthed out of the church that was pushing education and those things. And there's no connection today to the church. So if I'm growing up at 29th and MLK, and I'm in that kind of environment, and my mother may be single, maybe 3 or 4 of us in that household, I'm not seeing the formula.
Right.
Like John may be seeing the formula who grows up, in Pike Township and has a mother and father who both have good jobs and they're living middle class, as Annette talked about, the 2-car garage, and live in a nice home. So they're growing up seeing the formula, and their parents are pushing education and are getting your skills and those things. So you probably have a greater chance of making it than maybe me. Not that I might not make it, but I think the barriers are greater.
I want to say one thing real quick. That is, I know black fathers who take care of their kids. Mm-hmm. They may not be in the household,
right?
But I've seen them.
I think there's some.
I want my black fathers to understand.
I think there's some of us out there, yeah.
But we need more of them.
Yes, we do.
We need more.
We need more.
We need to quadruple the number.
Exactly. Quadruple, yeah.
Yeah, but yes. But I think it also, there needs to be a demand that gets the students from kindergarten to 12th grade to get their skill level higher. I mean, that's, we're bringing them through the pipeline. Yeah. They graduate. But if they're not reading, Indiana now, as we talked about last week, are focusing on 3rd grade students who can't read. There may be 20% of them.
Right.
That is a death knell.
Right.
If you're not competent and ready to, if you're not at that level at the 3rd grade, catching up is almost impossible.
So is the graduation rate not reflective of the progress of Black America? In the sense, if we have in 2023, 82% of Black students graduating from high school, that would give me hope. But if they're really not skilled up at 82%, then what happens to them once they graduate from high school?
I believe they get frustrated.
Okay.
I believe they get disappointed. I believe then it's that job that they have to take in order to make a living, but it may not be enough money for me to buy a house so I can get out or get my own apartment or get my own car. That can be devastating, I think, for a young kid that's trying to get out and make it. So if we're graduating 82%, but only 22% are hitting the level of competency that you need to be, there's a lot of students that are going to be left behind.
So how do we fix that, if that's the case? So most of us would probably look at the graduation rate and say, okay, we're making progress. We're still behind white America at 90%, Hispanics at 86%, Asians at 96%, but most of us would say we're making progress. And one encouraging thing, the fastest growing group that is graduating from college now is Black females.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there seems to be a light bulb that's to turn on among Black females that hasn't turned on among us Black males.
I think Black females has always out-achieved Black males.
Wow.
But the question there is, who does she pick for a partner? She's got to become a more diverse woman and find a partner that's got a degree, or find a partner that's skilled up. She wants somebody that can match her needs.
And that's what we're finding. That's happening a lot.
Yeah. So if I had a daughter now, I would tell her, don't just look at the Black community. You look at where there's some skills and some degrees and some potential to grow and go forward. I don't care what he looks like or, she looks like. I don't care. But the skill level is going to determine how you live.
And that's a good topic for discussion as well.
That is.
Diversity, because a lot of African American women, that's what they're looking for.
Yeah.
We don't. I just wish it was, and Pastor Harrison just touched on that too. How do we get the African American men to get up to that standard?
I think it's difficult.
It's just hard
because you got this
I have
culture war.
I know I have a lot of opinions, and this sounds like part 3.
Yeah.
Because this is a long discussion, because I think you're right. What I'm seeing out there, black women are having to make some tough decisions now, because there's not enough of us to go around.
Yeah.
So that if you want someone, you cannot just be focus on finding a black mate,
right,
where there may be someone from another race that meets your criteria, John.
Yeah.
If you're looking for someone who wants the same things out of life that you do, and has a steady income. I know most of women don't want to be taking care of anybody, and I'd be on my daughters if they taking care of somebody.
Right.
Because your mom ain't taking care of your daddy.
Right.
Amen. We're equal partners in this. Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
That's
So
I think that you just hit it on the nail. You said equal partners.
Right.
And that's what it should be, equal.
Yeah.
Now, back in the day, it was a little different, though. The woman wasn't even looking for equal. She really wanted the guy to be, it was more of a 70-30 or 60-40 or whatever. But now we're settling for
but she was
equal.
Even then, though, she was picking somebody who worked. Mm-hmm. Now, he may not, be at her skill level, but he worked.
Right.
And he had the job and
he
had
did
the
duties
money,
at the house.
had the income.
He had an income. I mean, a partner. Mm-hmm. Now, it's a whole different game.
Yeah.
We don't want to be partners. We don't want to raise the kids. We don't want to contribute to the income level. I mean, it's tough. So I know what I tell my daughter. Don't bring me nobody in here that ain't skilled up and working.
Well, let's talk about next week that this whole thing about. Because I think I believe if we fix the family structure, it's going to fix a lot of these other issues that we're facing in the black community, and even from my piece, the issue of crime.
Right.
Yeah, I just when the crime and violence, I just believe it will. So I want to kind of talk about that, because I have some strong feelings on that, because I read an article not long ago. For women who are very successful, if you're making, $100,000 as a black female, do you marry someone who may only be making $30,000 or $40,000, but is a good man? Or are you looking for someone who's also making those kind of figures for you that you're making? Or are you just looking for someone who's going to be a good husband, regardless of the color of his skin? And it was a good article, and I'd love to hear your comments on that, Annette, by black women who were struggling with that, But most of the problem was they wasn't finding enough men who were even making $30,000 or $40,000, who were good men, and who wanted to be married and have a family. And that seemed to be one of the big issues.
Like you guys said, equal partner. I think as we talk about that next week, we still need to figure out, how do we get our African American men up to that standard?
Okay.
How do we?
Yeah, we'll talk about that next week.
That's going to be hard.
Well, thank you, Annette and John, for joining me today on Real Talk.
Thank you.
I'm Reverend Charles Harrison, and this has been Real Talk. Join me next time as I bring more Real Talk about the real issues that affect our community here in Indianapolis and across the country. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast and share it on Facebook and Twitter. And I'm going to ask that you share it with other people so we can build up the membership of this podcast, because we're not afraid to talk about the real issues and be honest and uncensored. This is Reverend Charles Harrison, and I pray that you have a blessed and you have an awesome day.
This is Real Talk with Reverend Charles Harrison.
Be sure to like and subscribe to this podcast.
And be sure to check out other great podcasts on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
Online now at allindianapodcast.com.